Happy Monday, everyone. I'm here with Baloo in my beach resort toy box, and today we're going surfing. Now, this is the one sport that I've done in this series, at least so far, that doesn't use any of the sports toys. There are no balls, no goals, no scoreboards, and you might be wondering why I did this sport. Well, I couldn't do a sports toy box with a beach theme without incorporating surfing. I mean, it's just one of the things you want to be able to do when you go to the beach, right? Now, my version of this is based off a video that I saw a few years ago in which a toy box creator built a wave simulator with a massive towering wave. They used hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blocks attached to various paths, and they designed the whole thing to move like a real wave. It was really impressive. But I remember it took up nearly all of their available memory just to build that one wave. They didn't have enough memory left in their toy box to do much of anything else. And I wish I could credit that toy box creator and include a link for you, but I just can't find that video anywhere now, so it must have been taken down or something. But as ambitious as that project was, I got to thinking that I don't really need a wave that big. It just needs to be able to be big enough to lift the player off the ground and carry them along. And I love the way that fades out as it gets near the shore. So anyway, that's what I've built, and let me demo it for you. And by the way, I'm using the power disc for the Hanging 10 with Stitch surfboard. But if you don't have that power disc, any hoverboard pack will do. You can even use the basic Incredibles one that's in the toy box. But you want to catch the wave, and ideally you kind of want to be down just off the top of the wave here a little bit. And you can just kind of ride the wave along. Takes a little bit of practice, but it's worth it. And that's how you go surfing in the toy box. It's pretty fun. But as you'll see when we get to the build exercise and the logic for creating the wave, it takes a while to put it all together. And when you're done, you can ride it for a minute or two, like I did there, and then you're ready to move on to something else. So to give you something else to do with this wave and extend the enjoyment of it, I've built a little surfing challenge. And so let me demo this. It's just a basic collection quest, but we're going to use the wave and the surfboard to reach some of the collectibles that you wouldn't normally be able to reach. So let's start the challenge. And of course it's timed. So this one, catch it. Oh, almost caught it before it went under the wave. Come on. Whoa, don't go near the edge. Of course this can be kind of challenging to pick it up. There it goes. So those on the ground and the ones that are just hovering a little bit above are pretty easy to reach. But the ones like this one up here, you need the wave to help you catch that. Oh, and I just missed it. Oh, and I just missed that one too. Let's see if we can get this one. Ah! So this can be kind of challenging. This takes the surfing to a little bit of a different level. And sometimes, as you can see, trying to get these can be a bit of a challenge. Let's get up on the wave here. See if we can ride it up to this one. Ah! Just missed it. Oh. So this takes a little bit of time. And I won't make you watch me try to get all of these because I have a feeling that's going to be painful to watch. But you get the idea. And I'll fast forward now and I'll meet you at the end when I've got them all. Okay, I've got one more to go, and it's that one. and I can't quite reach it. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to cheat. And there we go. You can see what happens when you're not riding the surfboard. So that's it for surfing. It's a lot of fun, especially with the collectible challenge. But now that you've seen it, let me show you how to build it. Okay, so we're going to begin by building the wave itself. And this is what we're going to spend the rest of this episode building. I'll show you how to build the collectible challenge next time. And just so you know, building this wave took me a total of about 4 hours. So even though it's an easy build, it will take you some time, so be prepared for that. I'm going to start first by showing you what I've done. I've done some setup work already. So I've dropped a terrain block up here out of the way with 2 action buttons on it that we can use for testing. And I do have to correct something that I said on the build exercise. I had pointed out when I dropped these blocks that I had put 4 of them out here, and I did. I forgot to mention, though, that there's 2 of these on this end to kind of fill it all out, so that's important. And then on the end of these blocks, on the end of these terrain blocks, I've added some building blocks here, and I'll pick this one up. This is the curved ramp block, and you'll notice it's a little taller than what I need. The part that's above the terrain is the part that I want to use for the front of the wave. And so I've placed a row of these across the back, and they're all styled to use the water theme, excuse me, which you can find in the styling menu for that. So that's what this is styled to use. And then I've got another row of those back here flipped around. They're about a block apart, but that doesn't really matter. And then this is the other block that we're going to use for the top of the wave. And this is the curved block, again out of the basic blocks drawer. Alright, and the numbers that I'm going to show you as we attach these to the path and maneuver them might change a little bit depending on whether you put it down in this orientation or that orientation. And these are all at the same orientation, and I couldn't tell you which way it is because it looks the same on either way you flip it, so you won't really know until you get it over here attached to the paths. And then I've got several things set up over here. And ideally, I would like to connect all of these blocks to one single path, which would ensure that they all move in unison. But unfortunately, that's not possible, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. So we're going to need 3 paths to make this work, and these 3 paths need to be perfectly parallel to each other, or otherwise parts of the wave won't move the same as other parts. So I've kind of denoted the center path here by going about the center of the blocks along the way. And I think this is actually the center right here on this edge, but there's a block seam here, so I moved it over a little bit. And you can see how I've put these down. This is the same block I'm using for these that I've placed here and here, separated by a little square block. And then the same block I'm using here, I've placed up here. So this kind of shows you how we're going to build the wave. And by placing these here, this tells me where I need to place the starting point for the path. All right. And I'm only going to be able to connect about 12 blocks or so out to this. So only about here or so from here over are going to be able to be attached to that path. And from about here over, I'm only going to be attaching to that path. So I've got another one set up over here the same way, and another one down on that end. And these are denoting where the paths are going to ultimately go. All right. And then I've got some other blocks down here. These are the blocks that I'm primarily interested in to help me place the path points, and you can see they're lined up with the blocks down here. And there's 3 of them. And then I've got some spacer blocks. And it starts with the one sitting down here on top of the little terrain transition thing. Okay? And we're going to be putting a path point underneath each of these small square blocks. So these are just spacers. And all of these blocks, none of them are styled. They're all going to come out when we're done. So let me just show you that's what we have here, and you can duplicate that on your own toy box. You can duplicate that one and that one. The only difference with this one is I can't place the small terrain square block here because of this structure. But you can see how these are lined up. So that's what we have to start with. This is your setup exercise, so you can pause at this point and get all of these things set up that way. All right. Now, these blocks here are ultimately going to sit like this when they're attached to the path. And since the blocks sit on top of the path, that means the path, for the most part, is going to be sitting 1 block below the surface of this terrain piece of terrain here. And so that's important to note. And I use this block here just for a spacer, just to show you how to set this up. So we can go ahead and take these out once you've got this all set up. It's a little bit easier to work with when these are not here. Okay, now I would like to have the wave kind of rise up out of the block here and move down towards the shore. And then when it gets to the shore, have the wave height diminish as it approaches the shore. And so we're going to have kind of an arc that we're going to build here with the path, just so you kind of know what it is we're going to be doing. So we're going to start with the central path here, the main path. And we'll go up to the Creativitoys, and we're going to place this point directly underneath this structure here. And again, this is the middle structure, not the one over there, not the one over there. And I'm not placing this just yet. I'm showing you where this goes. Starting on the surface, we're going to go straight down to the bottom edge of the terrain. And my phone's ringing while I'm trying to record here. So we're going to the bottom edge of the terrain, and then we're going to go up 1 nudge from the bottom. All right? So this is the bottom edge of the terrain. We go up 1 nudge. That's where we drop the first point. Okay? And again, that's directly underneath here. 1 nudge up from the bottom of the terrain. And I'm looking at this at the side because we're going to be building that direction. All right, so as we do this, we're going to move over 3 nudges to the left. So 1, 2, 3, and up 2. 1, 2. There's our first path point. And then we're going to go over 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and up 1. That's where the next one will go, and I'm just making sure that I'm in a straight line. This point did not move off to the side, to the left or right, and it didn't, so that's good. And that's our next point. And you'll notice this is 2 nudges below the surface of the terrain. So this is exactly where we want this to be. So those blocks will ride along here. And now at this point, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to be precise. But we're going to drop points along here, heading for the shore. and they don't have to be exact, they don't have to be precise. Main thing is because we have such a short distance at the starting point between all those path points, we want to make sure that we're not going to be bending the path. And this last one will go right here underneath that terrain block. All right, so we drop that. Now the way I have this spaced out, you would go 8 nudges or use the blocks above as your guide. So this is 8 nudges to the left of the previous point, and we're going to go down 1. All right. And then the next one goes right underneath this point, this block below the shore, and right down at the level of the bottom of the terrain. And looking back over our path, we can see we're in a straight line, so we're all good. I'll go ahead and exit. So there is our first path. Now you can put your second path right here next to this, if you'd like, to make sure it's lined up exactly with these points, and that would be recommended. You could come down here and do this again down this way and wing it, but it's going to move best and work best if those points for the other paths are right next to the other ones. Because again, these paths have to be perfectly parallel. And that includes the points in the middle along the way. So we're going to come down here on top of this one, and we're going to move to the left. And probably 2 nudges would be easiest. And so we're going to drop our second path right here and go parallel with this one. And make sure, again, these points are directly across from those. And we have the blocks at the start there and at the end. And those are probably the most important ones, but I've noticed if these are not precise in the middle, the wave does a little bit of weird things when it moves. And let's just kind of make sure, yeah, we're going in a straight line. All right, and then exit. And then we're going to do the same thing for the third path. And this way we'll look that direction. So we want to make sure everything is perfectly parallel. Again, if you don't, different sections of the wave will move a little bit differently than other sections, and it becomes very noticeable. The second and third path here, this isn't where these are ultimately going to be, but this helps us make sure they're parallel. Oops. And there we go. So there are our 3 paths. And now what you want to do is move those paths to their final resting point. So this one needs to move over there. And so I'm going to pick this piece up, and it's very important at this point that I do not move backward or forward with this camera view. I can move to the side if I want, but I should not move this way or this way. That would be a problem. So we want to make sure we move just this direction. We want to move this right underneath those blocks up there. All right, and as you can see, that's going to make your yellow line connecting the path points go all wonky. Ignore that. All right, and then finding the other path points is going to be a bit of a challenge. So what I would recommend is finding the path. And we're probably going to be easiest to find it here. This is the original path. All right, so there's the next path point, and then go over, pick that one up, and again, don't go forward or backward with this. You're just going to go directly across, and you want this right underneath there, and again, ignore that yellow line because it's going to go screwy. You just need to make sure the points are placed precisely where they need to be, directly across from these others. And I went right by. Okay, and then you go up to the next point, grab the next one, and so on. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and move all of these points over to the final place where they need to be. Again, make sure they're lined up, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I'm still moving points, but I wanted to show you something. I'm on my last path here, and you can see the angle of the camera I'm using. You'll also notice as soon as I placed that last point, it jumped me back to where the point had been originally. And so then I can move the cursor back to where I was, grab the next point, and move it over. And then it jumps me back. I can come back, pick up the next point, and repeat. So that's a little tip that might be helpful for you to help you line up these points and be able to select the next point more easily. I was going to come back after all of these had been done, and as I was moving these points, I figured that's actually a helpful tip. So, you're welcome. What can I say except you're welcome? Alright, so now it gets a little bit tricky. So we have to use that block to kind of help us get to the next point, because we have to move not just backward, but down. Or not just laterally, but down a little bit to pick that point up. And again, you can use the guide over here when you get to the end to make sure the point is in the right place. And the next one should be right under here, underneath that block. And there it is. And again, use the block up above as your guide. Alright, so at this point we have all of our paths. And you can kind of see that's in a straight line. You can kind of look at the path that's over here and note that that's in a straight line. And same with the one that's over here. So make sure all the points are going in a straight line and they're not off at all when you look at it from this direction. Now obviously you look at it this way, it's going down below the terrain at that point. It's going down below the terrain at this point. Alright, so that's what we have so far with the paths moved to their final place. Now we can begin connecting these blocks. And actually before we do that, we need to set the path properties. So let's do that. So we'll go to each of the paths, and we're going to set these with auto start off. Everything else stays the same. Alright, we're going to do that for all three paths. Because if you leave that on, that's going to cause problems. Alright, then we'll head back this way to the third and final one. Do the same thing there. And the other thing that might be helpful to do at this point is go ahead and hook these buttons up. So this first button we're going to use to start the wave moving. The other one will set up to stop it. So this first button, we're going to connect this to all three of the paths. We're going to make the same logic connection to do a reset and play. And you'll connect that button to the other two paths as well. And this button, new logic connection when pressed. This will come over to each of the paths and do a reset and stop. Okay, then you can use that for testing purposes. All right, let's begin with this middle wave. And again, these blocks that I've placed here are going to kind of help us get this thing started as far as the positioning of all of these go. So we'll begin with this first block. We'll open the logic menu. This is the block, by the way, that's right off the end of that. Open the logic menu, do a new path connection. And this is why we have these blocks here, is because this really helps us find this path point a little more easily. And then the block jumps underneath here. And then we're going to select the block, open its properties, go to Toy Box Path, and let me grab my notes because this is where we have to start setting path properties. So for this set of blocks, this first one we don't have to change too much, all right? Because it's setting at the right height that we want already. And so we are not going to orient along the path. All of those points are fine. The horizontal offset is fine for now. Vertical offset is 0. The forward-backward offset, you need to set this to 8. The rest of these are fine, and you're going to leave the movement style set to the default of loop. And what you'll see as we come out of that is it has, changing that forward-backward to 8, has moved the block underneath this one. All right, so that's where we want that block to be. Now the next block next to it, and let's do that. I could build the whole wave with these three first, but let's just kind of stick with these for right now. So this one, we'll do a new path connection. Again, we got to get right underneath those blocks centered and come down and pick up this path and Toy Box Path, and that jumps the block here. Select that block, open the properties, Toy Box Path, and a lot of this is going to be very repetitive. Forward-backward offset, again, needs to be 8. But this time we're going to set the horizontal offset to 4. And what you can see is that has moved this block over here next to the other one where it needs to be. This one you're going to do the same thing, except you're going to set the horizontal offset to 8. This one, the horizontal offset will be set to 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, 44, 48. And what you're going to notice at this point is the slider doesn't go any further than 50. So you cannot connect this one to that path. That's as far as you can go. And that's why we need the other path over here for the rest of these blocks. All right. Going this direction, let's go ahead and attach this one. So new path connection. Get centered underneath here, go straight down to the path, connect it to the path. For this one, we go to the properties, Toy Box Path. Forward-backward offset again is 8. This time, though, the horizontal offset is going to be -4. So on this side of the path, we go minus. The other side of the path, we go plus, and you can see that has moved the block over here. And those sliders, again, only go up to 50. So once again, you're going to connect all of these. This will be -8, -16, -20, and so on as far as you can go till you get to -48. All right. Now for the back end of the wave, we'll connect this one up to the path. And this one's very similar, but it's a little bit different. Connect to the toy box path. Properties. The forward-backward offset on this one is also going to be 8. And you might think, well, it moved it forward last time, so wouldn't that move it forward as well? But the problem with this is, though, the block is flipped, so the direction is now the other direction. So this is now the positive direction, that's negative. And as you can see, setting it to 8 again has moved this to the right position. So that's where that has to be. So all of these blocks are going to be set with a forward-backward offset of 8. All of these sloped blocks. All right? Doesn't matter if they're on the front, doesn't matter if they're on the back. Now the next one, let's do this one, because that's the order we did them for the front row. Again, we're going to select this underneath, come down, connect it to the path. Got to move up to select that block. For the properties on this, again, forward-backward offset is 8. The horizontal offset, though, because we flipped the block, now going that direction, away from the path, away from the camera here, is minus. And you can see it placed it in the right direction. So these blocks, when you're building out this direction, go positive. These blocks, when you go this direction, are negative. And it's flipped on the other side too. These blocks, when you're connecting and building in this direction, go minus. On this side, when you're building this direction on the back side of the wave, they go positive. All right? Which means this block back here is +4, +8, +12, +16, and so on. This is -8, -16, -20, and so on. All right? And then you come to the cap. And this is going to differ a little bit, again, depending on whether you drop this way or this way. And now I got to place this up here because I picked it up. All right. So we'll go ahead and put it back at the orientation there, like I did for all the others. We'll do a new path connection on that. Connect it up to the path. Select that block. Go under Properties, Toy Box Path. Now this one's a little different. Forward-backward offset, we're going to leave it 0 because it needs to be right over the path point. The vertical offset, though, we're going to set this to 6 because it's got to sit up a little bit higher than the other blocks in order to form the cap of the wave. All right? And then the other properties are 0. What you end up with is this sitting like that. That gives us the cap, the top of the wave. Now, let's select this one and add it to the path. New path connection. Properties, Toy Box Path. Vertical offset is 6. The horizontal offset, this is going to depend on which way that block was placed when it was put down originally. So I'm going to start with 4. We'll go positive and see what happens. All right, so that moved the block over here. Which is not what we want. All right. So the horizontal offset for that isn't going to work. So we got to put that back to 0. And we have to use forward-backward offset. And that might seem unintuitive to you, but that's the one that it wants. And we'll try positive first. And you can see it put it over on this side. So if we want to build in the same direction with the orientation that I've got, when I put those blocks down originally, the forward-backward offset needs to be -4. You can see that slid over to the left. So now that block is sitting over here, which agrees with where we took it from. So depending on the way you placed this block originally, when you put them up here, will determine whether or not you're going positive in this direction or negative, and the opposite, positive or negative in that direction. Okay? And so since we went, which I can't remember, since we went negative in that direction, that means we got to go positive for this direction. So when I connect this one up to the path, we go to properties, vertical offset is 6, forward backward is going to be +4. And you can see that placed the block where it needs to go. So that's how you connect those blocks to the path. And once again, you're going to go as far down as you can till you hit 48 on the count. And then all the rest of the blocks are going to go over here. So when you come to this path, you're going to start with this block. And you're going to do exactly what you did with these blocks. Okay? You're going to use the same offsets. So this is going to be 0. This one is going to be +4, +8. -4, -8, and so on. It's like you're building another set of blocks attached to this. So you're mirroring what you did over here. And the same thing with this one. Okay? You're going to attach these blocks to that too. And you're going to attach them the same way you did with the middle one. Basically treat it like the middle one doesn't even exist. You're just connecting whatever leftover blocks you've got on this end to this path. All right? So I'm going to go ahead offline and do that, and I will be back in just a moment. Okay, all of the blocks are connected, and it took me about 4 hours to connect them all. So this will take a little bit of time. And I've also hooked up the buttons to the other paths, so that's all done. And let me go ahead, and I would suggest leaving these blocks out here until you have a chance to test it, but since I already know this works, I'm going to go ahead and take these out just so you can clearly see the wave, because now we don't need these temporary helper blocks anymore. And you can see all of the blocks are attached below the path there, all the way across. And yeah, that takes a little bit of time, but the end result is so worth it. It just looks so good. We can take these helper blocks out too, because we don't need these anymore. They just look ugly. But they're so helpful in getting this set up. All right, let's go up to our little command center and test this out. We're almost done for the day. Got one more thing to do after this, but we got to see this in action. All right, so here we are, and here we go. And there comes our wave. And that looks really, really good. It's all moving in unison all the way across. So all of my path points are obviously directly parallel to each other on all 3 paths. It's all moving as if it's all connected to one path. Yeah, it's time to celebrate, Baloo. This is awesome. And then the wave moves below as it goes down at the end of the path, and there you go. and then it loops around to the other side, and so you have a continuous wave. You got one wave coming in, and when that one dies out, the next one comes up. Let's go ahead and hit stop. Alright, so I would recommend moving this little platform and those buttons underneath the terrain in case you need them at some future point, and put them down below here, out of sight. The last thing we need to do is we want to start this up when the player first enters the toy box. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this, and I've moved all of these toys below the terrain, as you can see, and done a lot of cleanup. The level starter was over here. If we go directly down below, there's our level starter. Your first idea probably would be to connect it up to this and have this do a reset and play on all three paths when you come in. And sometimes that works, but not all of the time. What I have found is that when that gets triggered, the toy box usually isn't quite finished loading yet. And so it may start one path, and there could be a little bit of a delay before it starts the next path. And you can clearly see the three different sections of the wave moving a little bit offset from each other, which is not good. And so what I have done is I've set up a trigger area over top of the start pad, along with a logic gate. And what we're going to do is connect this up, the trigger area, so a new logic connection when exited by player any. We'll use this to connect up to all three of the paths. And this is where keeping those little things out here until you're completely done might be helpful, because it makes it so much easier to find this path. But you're going to connect this up and do a reset and play on the path. You'll do that with the other two paths as well. And then we only want to do this one time. So if a second player comes in, we don't want to do a reset and play on the path. So that's why we have the logic gate. So we'll do a new logic connection when exited by player any. Come over to our logic gate and input. And on the logic gate, new logic connection on output. Come back to our trigger area and deactivate it. And that will ensure that that's only done one time. So if you bring a second player in, the wave will just keep going. It's not going to reset. And that's pretty important. So that's it for the surfing wave. Next time I'll show you how to build the collectible challenge. Until then, I want to thank you for watching my video today. Before you go, please hit the like button and leave a comment to let me know what you think of my surfing wave. You can also subscribe to my channel by clicking my photo in the lower right corner of this video. Have a great day!